Topping today's news, FTX cryptocurrency has its assets here in the Bahamas frozen. At COP27, Prime Minister Davis continues the march towards monetizing Bahamian carbon credits. The acting Prime Minister says Abaco and Grand Bahama spared the worst from Tropical Storm Nicole, and senators agree on the amendments to increase VAT-free electricity to $400. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jcn News. This is your Jcn Evening News. It's a pleasure to have you join us. FTX Digital Markets, a Bahamian cryptocurrency exchange headquartered here in New Providence, is facing serious challenges and is fighting for survival. And the Securities Commission of the Bahamas, SCB, has stepped in and frozen the company's assets and appointed a provisional liquidator. The SCB making the announcement in a statement on Thursday evening, noting that it has suspended the registration and applied to the Supreme Court of the Bahamas for the appointment of the provisional liquidator for FTX Digital Markets Limited, also known as FDM. The move came after the Commission became aware of public statements suggesting that clients' assets were mishandled, mismanaged, and/or transferred to Alameda Research. Based on the Commission's information, any such actions would have been contrary to normal governance without client consent and potentially unlawful. According to international media, the FTX crisis was triggered last week by reports that the balance sheet of Alameda Research, a crypto hedge fund also owned by FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried, was loaded with billions of dollars worth of FTT tokens, implying that any volatility in the token's price could endanger Bankman-Fried's empire. The SCB statement said, since the unfolding of the events involving FDM, the Commission has proactively dealt with the situation and continues to do so, and is determined that the prudent course of action was to put FDM into provisional liquidation to preserve assets and stabilize the company. The Commission contends it's committed to working with the provisional liquidator to try and obtain the best possible outcome for the customers and other stakeholders of FTX. In the United States, the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission are reportedly examining FTX to determine whether any criminal activity or securities offenses have been committed. Meanwhile, FTX Trading Limited founder and chief executive officer Sam Bankman-Fried has resigned from his position as CEO of the company as more information makes headlines around the world surrounding the apparent collapse of the cryptocurrency exchange company. In a statement released this morning, FTX Trading Limited, which does business as FTX.com, announced that the company and its affiliates, which make up FTX Group, filed for bankruptcy under Chapter 11 of the United States Bankruptcy Code in the District of Delaware in order to begin an orderly process to review and monetize assets for the benefits of all global stakeholders. Approximately 130 affiliate companies are also subject to pending bankruptcy proceedings. John Ray III has been appointed to replace Bankman-Fried as the CEO, but Bankman-Fried will remain to ensure an orderly transition. Prime Minister Philip Davis still making an impact on behalf of the Bahamas at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Egypt. Earlier today, the Prime Minister introduced the Bahamas' Blue Carbon Credit Management Initiative at the CARICOM Pavilion at COP27. A special forum was held, opened by Prime Minister Davis, who spoke to what the Bahamas is doing to maximize and leverage opportunities in the blue carbon market. In his national statement at the World Leaders Summit this past Tuesday, Prime Minister Davis noted that other countries are already considering adopting the Bahamas' model. Today, the Bahamas delegation, including Beneath the Waves CEO Dr. Austin Gallagher and Director of the Carbon Management Limited for the government, Anthony Ferguson, shared how an integrated regional approach can maximize the benefits of blue carbon trading for the Caribbean.
At the regional pre-COP meeting of the heads of government, which I hosted this summer, my fellow leaders reached a strong consensus that these are important issues for the Caribbean. While there are opportunities, there are also challenges. So by working together, hopefully, we can take best advantage of one and overcome the other. We must also engage strongly with the private sector and other local stakeholders. Regional leaders also highlighted the need for simplicity and flexibility with the instruments using in carbon markets, especially in relation to carbon pricing. Protocols should also be agreed around the effective use of revenues, application of measurements, reporting and verification standards, and the avoidance of practices such as greenwashing. We believe that our approach in the Bahamas is a gold standard from which others can also benefit. We also believe that our
Prime Minister Davis says that it is also his belief that the Bahamas' approach to carbon credits reflects the realities of what is needed to effect real action to meet the challenge of climate change.
If we are to get real about implementing effective solutions, we need science, finance, and international climate diplomacy to converge as they do in our model of how best to establish these new carbon markets.
The Bahamas is one of the, if not the most richest countries in the world per capita, according to Beneath the Waves CEO Dr. Austin Gallagher. He spoke to CARICOM leaders regarding monetizing carbon credits, explaining that it is a tradable permit or certificate that provides validation of an offset, with 1 ton of carbon being a carbon credit. Meanwhile, Mr. Ferguson says the total ocean economy is worth about $30 trillion, adding that there are lots of opportunities in it for the Bahamas.
We want to design our asset, a natural asset, on 3 principles. 1, biodiversity, of course the climate, but more importantly, impacting the community. And as such, we have developed some what we call governance principles on how the assets will be managed. 1, of course, is the reduction of greenhouse gas, restoration and improvement of our economy and of our natural assets, conservation, protection, enhancement of our biodiversity, implementation and enforcement, and then of course the most important for me is the community co-benefit, where we impacting lives in the various islands of the Bahamas.
Regulatory framework was introduced by the Davis administration in the summer of this year for dealing and trading in carbon credits. Acting Prime Minister Chester Cooper led a delegation to assess the damage on Abaco and Grand Bahama on Thursday, within 1 day of the passing of Hurricane Nicole over the northern Bahamas. Speaking with the media, the Acting Prime Minister noted that Abaco had not been significantly hurt in terms of infrastructure. However, he says residents of Abaco are still of the opinion that there has not been enough investment in infrastructure since Hurricane Dorian. He contends there needs to be a focus on getting Abaco back to pre-Dorian levels at minimum. Tropical Storm Nicole battered Abaco early Wednesday before intensifying into a Category 1 hurricane when it made landfall on Grand Bahama on Wednesday evening. As for Grand Bahama, Acting Prime Minister Cooper noted that after speaking with Minister for Grand Bahama, Ginger Moxie, and Grand Bahama also fared well during the storm with no serious injuries or loss of life. Accompanied by opposition leader Mr. Michael Pintard, Mr. Cooper said they were all there to demonstrate in times of crisis we are stronger together. Also accompanying the acting Prime Minister was Minister of State for Disaster Risk Reduction, Miles Larota, National Security Minister Wayne Monroe, Minister of Works and Utilities Alfred Sayers, Social Services Minister Obie Wilshcombe, Minister of Immigration and Labor Keith Bell, and Parliamentary Secretaries Bacchus Roll and John Pinder. Meanwhile, government health care facilities on Grand Bahama and Abaco received minimal impact from the passage of Hurricane Nicole following the passage of the storm and the all-clear given for the Northwest Bahamas. Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Michael Dowell, along with a senior health team, traveled to the islands impacted to conduct post-storm impact evaluations at health care facilities. The assessments reveal that clinics on Abaco and Grand Bahama, as well as the Rand Memorial Hospital, incurred minimal roofing issues and minor water intrusion. The clinic at Grand Key was not adversely impacted by the storm. During the assessment, Dr. Dowell expressed his gratitude to the healthcare professionals on the islands for their committed service. He also used the opportunity to update staff on proposed infrastructural improvements to enhance the delivery of service at their respective facilities. Now, according to the Grand Bahama Healthcare Services, the Rand Memorial Hospital and the Public Health Clinic on Grand Bahama resumed normal working hours today, with public visiting or visitations also continuing today. And finally, in this segment, Minister of Economic Affairs, Senator Michael Halkitis, set in motion a second reading and committal of a bill for an act to amend the Value-Added Tax Act, which aims to increase the threshold of VAT exemption for electricity bills from $300 to $400, which means electricity bills under $400 will not be charged VAT. Minister Halkitis explains that the reason for this motion is to provide relief for lower income earnings in the wake of the gradual electricity cost increases for the next 18 months. News of BPL's rise in fuel charge, largely due to effects of the war in Ukraine, has been met with some pushback, particularly from the official opposition. Mr. Halkitis further explains what the government plans to do to combat inflation.
Number one, the price increases will be incremental, and so it will be phased in over 12 months in order to give consumers, businesses, and individuals an opportunity to make adjustments. Secondly, for those who use less electricity, 800 kilowatt hours or less, they will pay a lower increase, 2 cents as opposed to 4.3 cents for those who are consuming more than 800 kilowatt hours. The third thing, Madam President, is that we will recall that this increase was contemplated, and some would say announced prematurely by BPL back in February, but the government decided to delay that increase in the charge.
Mr. Halkitis says the government delayed the implementation of fuel hikes as long as possible to allow the economy to improve as citizens were beginning to recover following the pandemic. However, he said the government could not subsidize and absorb the fuel increase any longer. He says the government recognizes that the cost of electricity is a significant expense to households and businesses. Therefore, the transition towards renewable energy is vital.
The Prime Minister and his delegation are in Egypt in his continued pursuit of carbon credit, our objective being one of the first countries to issue a blue credit, and the objective is that any money, any revenue flowing from those carbon credits will be invested into renewables so that we might move again towards reducing number one, our dependency on foreign sources of energy, and secondly, the price. Because definitely it has an impact on us. We watch the price of oil every day, and it has an impact both on what it costs us, in terms, especially when transportation costs are going up, and as well it has a significant impact on our foreign exchange position. We have to have foreign currency in it to be able to purchase oil on the international market.
Speaking to the fuel hedging strategy for the future, Minister Halkitis compares fuel hedges to buying insurance for stable fuel prices for the short term. However, he explains that due to the previously mentioned changes to the fuel market industry, it does not make sense to engage in negotiations for the new fuel hedge at this time.
A policy was bought, certain segments, different time periods. As time elapsed, some of those expired, but as they expired, financial conditions has also changed. The price of oil has changed. The mix of fuel that BPL is using has also changed. So you could not purchase the same hedge at the same price when conditions have changed. And so what we continue to do is to monitor the situation, and when it is financially feasible, and I think the expert advice is at these high prices, it is not feasible to engage right now, because it's like, for example, Madam President, when we speak about insurance, if you buy an insurance policy when you're 20 years old, the price is very much different if you try and buy that policy when you're 80 years old.
According to the minister, while some of the hedges have expired, others are still in place up to 2024. Minister Halkitis says these are uncertain times, and consumers and governments worldwide have been challenged by the very same global issues as the Bahamas. Senator Randy Rolls seconded the bill for the amendment from $300 to $400 VAT-free electricity bills. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.